Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Brian. I'm the host of the Left of Greg show. You're going to be watching the video version of our audio podcast. Please, guys, if you like the video, like it, subscribe to the channel. There's going to be more content on there if you're already a subscriber, and a better way for us to get you guys some more stuff. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them below. Check out our links down below to get a hold of us and to actually find out more places where you can get more information about this. Please like and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook at HBPRNA. Remember, all these cases that we discuss and all the discussions that we have are through the lenses of what we call human behavior, pattern recognition, and analysis. So please like it, share it, tell your friends about it, and we hope you enjoy the show. Did the little indicator come up yet?
We are in like Mickey Finn.
We are live. Okay. All right, Greg, we'll go ahead and get started. We are recording this on Monday, July 13th, the morning of. So we did actually have someone else planned to be on that. We had to reschedule last minute, but we had this time planned for the podcast anyway. So we said, hey, let's go ahead and do one. And kind of wanted to go over something that we've talked about discussing before, but just hasn't really come up yet. And what spurred my memory, I guess, or what made me think of this was this morning that the Washington Redskins announced that they're retiring their name. That's what they called it, retiring their name, Redskins. And to be determined yet, I didn't get a chance to read too much, but they haven't come up with a new name. So the Washington Redskins football, obviously, people find that very offensive that they're called Redskins, rightly so. That's kind of an offensive term these days. And then they're going to change it. All right. So that got me thinking of stuff we've had conversations before about. And so the overarching theme of today would be what's in a name, right? What is that? What is the meaning behind names and some of the things we give words to? Because oftentimes, well, one, it's important, sometimes more important than we realize. Sometimes I think a lot of places put a lot of time and effort into naming something, and maybe us on the user end don't even realize the meaning behind it and everything. So it's actually extremely significant. And I kind of want to, well, there's a few things I want to talk about because one, obviously naming conventions, then things like taxonomy, right? That's a classification using naming, typically scientific classification of things. We always think of like, genus, species, all those things that's a taxonomy of how we articulate, all living things. And then semantics, of course, is the study of language and the meaning behind words. So there's a lot in there. And I think that's often forgot, right? Meaning where these names come from, what goes into them. So what spurred me, obviously, like I said, Washington Redskins changed their name. But one of the immediate things that it also reminded me was of, how much thought goes in behind it. So we are part of a project right now. We hope to be able to talk about it a little bit more at a later date, hopefully soon. But with this partnership that we're in, same thing. They went through it took a long time to get to the final name of what they wanted to call it. And to the point of where we were getting like, all right, we're done, we're done with this, getting frustrated with it. A lot of people were, but it highlights how important it is, right? It's not just important to, who you're speaking to, the potential clients and customers, but to the folks the people who started it, right? And what they want to call it and what they want to be taken. Because when you first hear a name of something, you're automatically going to think something based on your own life, based on your own biases, based on your own everything. And I don't use that term bias negatively, just meaning there's cognitive biases and what you think of, there's heuristics, all this stuff. So you're going to hear something and it's going to make you think of something, right? And so a lot of times, especially marketing and big companies, they want to get that name right so that it elicits an appropriate response, right? They want you to get either some feeling or belief or idea. So being now that it's 2020 and it's the Washington Redskins, that's an offensive term to Native Americans. And so they're changing that. And this is a big deal, I think, a bigger deal than a lot of people realize. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on this. I just want to give you a little background, Greg, because I know I shot you an email saying, hey,
Minutes ago,
our guest rescheduled, but we're still going forward. And by the way, here's what I want to talk about. You're like, thanks.
So here's a couple of things in random scattershot, my dear friend, on a Monday morning. Number one, it's my brother Jeff's birthday. So
that's right. Happy birthday, Jeff.
Happy birthday to Jeff. I believe he's in his 70s now. We're from a very close family. Exactly. So I called him this morning at dark 30. We got up just after 4. I called him and clearly woke him up out of a dead sleep. and sang to him. And it was a very offensive song, just so you know. So that's a good topic for today, is being offended by something. The other thing is that just because this is in the old time slot doesn't mean it's going to be near the quality that you may expect. But at least you can say we're punctual, because we're not going to leave you hanging. And you said something funny, Brian, and I know we've got a bunch of factors and we don't want to go down a rabbit hole or just with one spiral. But the funny thing is, when you were talking about the bias, I always think of, when somebody says perspective bias, I think of Uncle Buck. And he's walking through that party with all the kids, and he goes, sometimes it's the hat. The hat makes people angry.
Yeah.
And those people go, don't go in there wearing that hat. Remember that? They give that advice.
Yeah.
But you actually completely unconsciously you said, and if I can find the exact word that you used, you said lately.
Yeah.
Can't find it. You said the Redskins are retiring their name, and they call it retiring. Well, basically, somebody that was hypersensitive could say that that's a form of implicit bias, because Redskins has been an offensive term since there's been
forever. Right.
You get what I'm trying to say?
Been
since the first person looked and goes, "Hey, what's up?" So the idea, though, I think that we have to keep sacred here, that to make sure that we lay down in the road just before we use it as a format, is, hey, if you intended to be offensive when you initially called out that word or that phrase, or then you should be damned for using it, and it should be changed.
Right.
So let's go back just one tick to the left.
No, that's perfect. That's where I wanted to start, because
human beings, we create our own unique realities from our own subjective perspectives, and so we perceive and understand things through the systems that we've created. So it's not fair to come back and go, hey, you bastard, wait a minute, I didn't even know. Like for example, Hitler ruined this mustache forever. Okay, so you're never going to be able to pull off that mustache, right? So Hitler didn't go. He wouldn't look. And I'm speculating here, Brian. We don't have a close familial bond there, but I don't think he's going, got to go to the beer hall push, thinking about manscaping. What about this? He didn't come up with that and then go, hey, doubly, I'm going to turn it offensive. I'm going to make it, deeply hateful. I'm not trying to make fun of an issue. I'm just trying to say that the hypersensitivity has gone to the level that now the Eskimo pie renaming and the syrup. So I just don't want to get down there.
No.
And have somebody think that I'm insensitive.
No. And I think that you've made it very clear, and let's continue to remind everyone of that. And I wrote it down, as you didn't say it this way, but intent is everything. Meaning, if you intended to use that term
as a slur, or as a slam, or in any
negative way, or an inside joke, well, then yes, it's horribly offensive.
It's out of line.
It's completely out of line. And now if that's not what it meant, that changes things. And I know,
right. It doesn't make it less hurtful.
No.
You see what I'm trying to say? But it does change the field on which we're playing.
And that's
totally agree.
Sticking with the football analogy there, I guess. But no, it's no. But that's a good point. So that's a great way to intro the whole subject here I want to get into today is, what's in a name. So naming conventions are important. People put a lot of time into them, and what you just hit up right front is their intent is everything. Okay, so it goes into, and because that reminds me, because the other thing was, it reminded me, as we were talking about this when I was a little kid, and when first times I was old enough to remember two people about to get into a fist fight and start yelling and screaming when I was a real little kid. Who knows how old I even was. But the guy kept yelling, and he was pissed because he said, you can't call me out my name. They kept calling the guy the wrong name on purpose to mess with him. And the guy was getting furious because that wasn't his name. It'd be instead of me going, okay, Gary, instead of calling you Greg, all right, easy, Gary, but it goes back to the intent, even though
we've never done that before.
I know.
Okay, so think about that. To tie that in, Brian.
Like that, but
before.
Yeah.
But think of it, when Bush chose to go on the air, Bush won, and he was goading Saddam Hussein, he kept referring to him as Saddam.
Yeah.
And what it was is he changed his name just a little bit to be a derogatory thing. Now, listen, okay, you're saying, well, these people are at war. That's allowed. Listen, you can't draw the line there. You can't say, well, here and here it's okay, but we're doing that. If you're going to be across the board on it, what you should say is, yeah, you're right. We need to go back. But I don't think, Brian, people sat around and they said, okay, where are we on the cigar store Indian? And then everybody around the room goes, well, in 417 years, they're going to look back and call us assholes. I don't think that occurred. And I think now that we're smarter and we know more, we understand more about socialization, we understand more about
Yes.
psychology and victimization, maybe we should. Maybe that's exactly what we need to do.
Well, no, well that is what's happening, but
It's happening, but does it need to happen in every instance?
well, okay, and that's exactly what I'm getting at here. It's, I think that I'm sure there's plenty of Native Americans here in the U.S. and when like, wow, finally, like you're literally using the term redskin. Like I have a friend who's Native American, who's born and raised on a reservation, everything, and he's just like, do you understand that's like that, like he laughs because he's like, he's just knows that people don't realize like, hey, that's like horribly offensive. Like you can't, like if this was to any other group, like we'd be like, you're calling them a racial slur, like you can't call a name that. And the fact that it took so long, so but the problem is then what happens, we go, oh man, wow, you're right, that's horrible, even though the name was like a lot of high schools and colleges in this country with Native American ties were paying homage in a sense
Redskin pride. I mean,
to
we actually put terms together.
whether it's the Braves or this, it was actually
Yep.
because, hey, we want to be looked at as a cohesive unit, respected fighting force on the battlefield, the sports field, right? But that the modern day battlefield. And so we're going to take the name of some warriors, you know what I mean? That was the intent behind it. It's
exactly. There were not many teams that chose sad sack loser assholes as you know what I'm saying, because the letters look perfect.
Well, it's just
on the t-shirt.
The SSAs.
You remember that, right?
SSLAs.
And when their cheer is, we've never won a game.
Yeah,
but you remember those guys.
But that's the point. Now it then changes when we then people take what I would call creative license with that type of ideology or that type of I guess direction. Thank you. And then
okay. I get where you're going, because you don't want to misname what it is.
Right.
It's a movement.
And then take it and apply it to other areas. So what is it, and why do those names change over time and become either very important or less important? Like I'll give you the example we were talking about with your iPhones and this, and Apple does everything this, and there's a whole naming convention behind that, and Siri is backwards for iris, which iris, the iris people, it's the part of your eye that takes in photons of light. So there's this meaning that builds on top of each other and layers on, correct? So that's obviously put a lot of thought into that. Now, maybe there's a population of the Siri tribe somewhere that in 20 years they go, hey, this is horribly offensive to just to keep it direct, but that's not what it was meant at the time. But why do us as humans, why do we put so much into that? Why, even looking back with the example I gave up with that guy's like getting so angry because the guy was calling, whether he knew he was calling the wrong name or not, was kept mispronouncing someone's name, like you said, Saddam Hussein or Saddam, like George W. or George H.W. Called him, the Bush Senior, during that time. Like, why is that so offensive to us, and why do we put so much importance on that? I guess that would be my opening question.
We're not trying to poke fun at anybody. We're not trying to conflate an issue. We're not trying to lessen an issue of racism or racial slurs. We're not trying to do that. But I say that we need to take a step back and understand the why, and take a look at the implications. So, for example, Wall Street. Wall Street was a barrier. It was a barrier during a major fight. So are we going to go back and say, well, we don't want to talk about Wall Street? Do you get what I'm trying to say? Let's rename that. And then stocks, stocks and bonds. But you can think about it, putting a person out in the stocks near Wall Street. What happens is we can't get so hypersensitive and go back and determine what the likely intent was when it wasn't. When somebody just came up with a name like the Buffalo, or they decided to call themselves the Wolverines, I agree that I'll give you an example in this way. Okay, so I'm a huge old movie fan, but not all old movies are good.
They don't age well
certainly
sometimes.
They don't, okay? So one of my favorite movies in the world is the Philadelphia Story, that starts off with some good old-fashioned domestic violence, and within the first couple of minutes uses a racial slur that was part of the script that was written back then. And it's a light slur, if there is such a thing. And it was, again, naming a thing that was very common amongst people that were entertainers during the time. but it doesn't make it any less offensive. So I come to you and I go, that's one of my favorite films ever. I really enjoy it. I'm not saying that I enjoy at the beginning where
where the guy's beating up a
Katharine
woman.
Hepburn, gets
Yeah.
pushed down, or where the woman in passing says something while they're taking a photo. I'm saying that the construct of the film and the pacing of the film, it's a really great film. And then all of a sudden, I'm watching, and I like Cary Grant films. So last night late, can't sleep. Sleep eludes me. I'm watching Bringing Up Baby, which is about them and a cougar, a puma, gosh darn, the one from Africa, whatever it is, with the spots of cheetah, leopard, and so during the film, they're using some terms in the old days. And guess what was on just before that? A Star Is Born with Judy Garland and 57, and she's standing there dancing on a loading dock, and she's got two black people that are dancing with her. That's the white person, and they're all tap dancing, and they're dressed in period costume, which is demeaning. Okay, so I'm sitting there doing this.
Well,
holy shit, can I still watch this? And
yeah, but
because I'm feeling really bad about it as an art form, I didn't think of it, and I didn't think that they were trying to portray the intent. They were just portraying what was in that time, in that period.
No, and I think I always look at those as, wow, like look at how far we've come as a society where we don't do, you know what I mean? It's almost like it's a temperature, it's a measurement, right? It's like taking, you can look back and go, geez, I can't believe people used to say
social
that stuff
barometer.
back then.
You're exactly right. And it was pervasive, wasn't it?
But
it was in everything.
But I look at it as like, hey, that's a natural course that has to happen, right?
Yes.
So meaning those things are going to come up, and people aren't going to realize everyone. I don't care what skin color you are, gender, sexual identity you are. Everyone
Brian is talking about his list of people that he would like to mate with right now. Go ahead.
So all of them,
short, fat,
everyone's in there. Everyone's got a chance. So
me too, maybe.
But the idea is, I already forgot where I was going with that.
Where are we going with that one? Yeah, and this is live, by the way.
So yeah, great. Thanks. I can't edit that out. But no, the idea is that it's a natural course of events that happens, and everyone, I don't care who you are, has offended someone in some way, not necessarily intentionally.
Okay,
completely
but did we
unintentionally? And if you didn't have someone to teach you that was wrong or bring something up, so
exactly.
Now you have that balance of well what's actually wrong. Is this where you get some people that are always like, oh, your feelings are getting hurt, and sometimes you're like, hey man, like you're not taking this issue seriously. But then you have on the other side,
yes.
you have people who take it way too far and say, well, everything has to go. Then you're going, well, no, this is the human condition. And if you look at where we're at today to compare to where we were 100, 200, 400 years ago, it's a night and day difference. And so when you look back at those now, the reason why I had this reaction to this morning was like, man, it seems with everything, like, I'm surprised it kind of took this long for the Washington Redskins to change their name.
Exactly. But again, remember pride. In
that's what I mean. Historical
and
pride.
And everybody.
Yeah.
So they're still going. Wait a minute. Are you serious? Wait. I would ask.
We didn't mean anything by it. This is our team. This is our history. It's like changing your family name. Hey, Greg Williams. That Williams name. Sorry, buddy. Like it's got to go. Like you'd be like, wait a minute.
I want to give you an example of exactly what you're talking about. So we're working out on the West Coast, early combat 100 days, and there was Mattis's former chief of staff and Mattis's current chief of staff, two diametrically opposed humans that had different views of everything, right? So diametrically means. But so I'm standing there, and a young Marine goes by for some reason. I said, hey, Devil Dog, step over here for a moment. And I took a knee, and we were talking, not the Copernic knee, and we took a moment. We were talking about some things, and then the Marine scrambled off to do his best and go to combat. And so the one colonel comes over to me and takes me off to the side and goes, hey, don't call them devil dogs. That's such a demeaning term. Okay, so my dad was prior commandant of the Marine Corps League. My dad, former Marine, and my dad was hugely proud of being called a devil dog. And I sent you the picture on a soft cap where he's got the big devil dog Motor City detachment. And it was a big, important thing to him. Now, let's roll the tape a little further back to Teufelhund, the devil dogs, and the naming convention on that.
Right.
So we could do a show, Brian, on the left and right limit of those.
That's a great example of where that come from, which is a proud historical name that the Germans gave the Marines because they were like, hey, these guys are like, devil dog, little Teufelhund, and they don't ever stop. They're the fiercest. It was such an honor for that in the Marine Corps tradition. But I
Come
will
get me. Exactly.
but then here's how it works. And then while you're in the Marine Corps or using that, you can often use that like, hey there, devil dog. Like that's now I'm messing with you because you're just a young enlisted guy or something like that, right? So
Yep.
so that stuff changes over time. It's no different than, and because when I see you do it, and a lot of people do it, when you see someone who's like active duty or military or whatever, you always go up because you served and you're like, hey, just thank you for your service. Okay.
Yep.
But and most people who use that, they're using that because they're really legitimately trying to say thank you for something. But me and my buddies use it differently. When you see someone who's being obnoxious, talking about how bad they are, like, oh, I served in, I was in this and I was in that, and they're making sure everyone in the area knows that they served in the
Right.
military, just being a total douche. And that's the first thing out of my mouth. Oh wow, you were in the war? Did you fight? Thank you for your service. And I get real sarcastic with it to tell them to knock it the fuck off because you look like a jackass and you're making the rest of us look like a jackass. But that's the thing. So it's my intent
coupled with perspective
is to say, hey, quit being a jackass, and your intent is genuine, and you're legitimately thanking people, because I've seen you then like try to do that, and some people take it the wrong way, and you don't realize it's happening. They're like, oh, this guy's messing with me, and you're going like, wow, that guy was kind of a dick, and I'm like, no, he just thought you were being sarcastic. You were actually being very genuine,
and nobody gives you any rules. I didn't have a laminated sheet
none
of rules.
And
so
you can't go, and this is what I meant by it. So you have to take it into the context of what it's meant in. So in that specific situation of you walking up and saying that, you have to take it in that context. So the naming conventions we have of everything, you have to take it in the context from which the time period where they named it. What did they mean when they named it? And
right.
It then
but you have to have a realistic set of rules too, Brian.
Yes.
I am absolutely for Black Lives Matter. I was a police officer for 27 years. I was completely colorblind, and then I'm blindsided in Denver when I walk up on a sign that says "No life matters" until Black Lives Matters. What? Okay, so listen, let's approach this scientifically, and let's fix the wrongs. But let's not go so emotionally that we can't see the forest for the trees.
Well, even that, it comes down to, because even people in that movement or using that term or in support of against are using that term differently, because meaning
that's you can't use it in this genre and in this and then say, but that's not how I meant it.
No, that's what I'm point. You don't get that, and the problem is it's such a
By the way, we're wearing the same shirt again today.
We are.
That's creepy.
Well, it's not the same one this time, because
it's the same shirt.
You're in Colorado and I'm not.
The same
California.
size.
But
you're behind me.
But me, it's a reverse camera. They got the partition. I could hit you on the back of the head right now.
Exactly. Quit that.
It's a screen. It's a green screen. So no, but that's the point.
Time I've distracted.
But even that's such a self-evident statement that why would you make someone say that? We're like, when someone would say, hey, do you feel that Black Lives Matter? It's like,
of course do.
Like why wouldn't
you? Every bit as much as
it's
any
like,
other being.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's so sometimes that intent behind is like, you must mean something else by this,
right? And if you have an ulterior motive, please share it with us, so we can get on.
Because there's clearly, because that's such a self-evident statement to the overwhelming majority of the population, right? That it's like so it's weird how we use this, and this gets into everything I kind of brought up, right? You have taxonomy, right? Naming conventions or classifications, I should say. Taxonomy is a classification usually for scientific purposes, but how we organize stuff. Naming conventions are again, that's how we organize information. I would say even like on your computer, where you put files and what you call things, you have to come up with naming conventions so that you can keep it organized and how it works for you.
Or you'll never find that file again, ever.
Exactly. And then you have semantics, right, which is the study of languages and all that. So those three areas kind of like all kind of coalesce a lot of times into how we come up with names and what we call things and the importance of it. But I think everyone forgets, is what you brought up and made it so clear at the beginning, was intent is everything, is what you meant to do with those words that give it power or give it meaning.
Even the law says that, Brian. The law says these are fighting words. These aren't.
So that's I think a good, clear distinction. Oh, okay. Oh, this is hilarious. Sorry. We've got on Facebook Live, so people are chiming in. And actually, you know who's chiming in is Brian Marin. He lives in England. We had linked up, guy with the same
Oh
exact name for me.
my!
He's like a
Is he wearing
PhD
a red
scholar.
shirt?
No, super smart guy. But he said, hey, what's in a name? Well, from one Brian Marin to another Brian Marin, thinking our name is unique enough. So it's kind of hilarious. There's only so many people, and he's talking about exactly where the Marins and Southern Burns of Sligo, Ireland. So clearly related at some point, but it's hilarious that people are chiming in with it. I already called your Williams last name out, but
So
I think
I'll give
that'll
you one. I'll give you one that's interesting. So Marin and I are working on this other project, and like he alluded to a little while ago and a few days ago, sooner or later you're going to know what that project is, and we want you all to get on board. But during this, we were working on marketing, which Brian and I normally don't do, meaning that we have a very POA and M way of looking at the world. And what we do is we set it up. Okay, this is the information you need to know. This is how it's going to be broken down into KSAs. Here's the ELO, TLOs, all that other stuff. But the idea was that we did that with this project as well. And then we came into a room and there was a dozen people in the room sitting around their phones. And the same thing happened last night with us, Brian. Do you know what charcuterie is, or charcuterie, where they have the meat?
charcuterie. It's a meat
Okay,
and
yeah,
cheese
yeah.
plate.
Right.
I'm well
So
aware of meats and
so
cheese
Shelly and I
plates.
got in an argument last night over how it's pronounced. So she brings out her phone and it's charcuterie or whatever
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
French, right?
whatever.
And the guy he's
Yeah,
got the French accent. I was pissed immediately at this guy because, of course, you wrote it, you can pronounce it, but make it easy for the rest. Well, where that goes is we were going through so many name changes on this company in the first 7 or 9 days that
yeah.
I was about to throw in the towel and just call the game. So I called two people that do marketing for a living, and they're amazing. And they were in the automotive industry marketing for many, many years, decades. And so I call them and I go, hey, I'm having this dilemma because these clients and friends, they just keep poo-pooing that it, no good decision. You know what I'm saying? It's just, oh no, I don't like that or this or that, or it doesn't sound right. And they said, one, the very first Jim Gilmore told me this, great dear friend Jim Gilmore, says, listen, do you remember the Pontiac Aztec, the car?
Oh,
But yeah, I remember that old
yeah.
piece of crap. And he goes, six executives from General Motors stood around and go, that's brilliant. And
Yep,
they paid for it.
yep.
And then Brian, my brother Brian Williams, a great advertiser, says that he and Gilmore put together the Tahoe, the Chevy Tahoe, the truck, all the
Hmm.
commercials, everything for the branding and everything, and went to the big release to General Motors and said, this is what we made up. And they're standing there holding each other, patting each
Yeah,
other
yeah,
on the
yeah.
head. And the guy goes, nah, it's a non-starter. And they go, why? And he goes, well, I was playing it while I was working out and my cat hates it.
Oh
My
God.
cat hates this $10 million advanced production number. So, Brian, humans can be arbitrary and capricious. So I won't venture down those paths and try to follow your logic if you're insane or if you're goofy.
Well,
And when I
yeah.
mean insane, I mean clinically. I mean that if you're going to be on one
If
of the
you're if
fringes
you
and you're
if well,
constantly
I
looking
think
for a fight, I'm
if
not going to go there.
if you're basing the marketing project for a new vehicle at General Motors, which I would say there's a little bit of money that goes into that,
A
like
little,
building that
yep, yep,
vehicle and investing in that and getting people on board. And there's probably a lot of, and you're going to put it on whether or not your cat likes it. Yeah,
yep.
you might want to go talk to someone. So
Exactly, and the chair reclines, and we're not talking about getting a petty, but no, I just want to make sure that when we go through those discussions, what we're trying to do is we're trying to come up with a term like intent is hugely important. We just ended
yes,
our
well
DARPA project,
we
and
always
we
yeah
never got through to the point
yeah.
that intent should be the overarching factor in everything, because there certain people's impressions on a program can be different than yours, and they could read
Yes.
into it, or they can come away with a different definition, or they can use a textbook definition, Brian, that sometimes falls well short of the mark.
Yeah, that is, and that's important to remember when we look at any of these names or any of these situations. Is one, there's often more meaning behind it. Anything that we realize, that like you just said, you brought up a great one, but even the naming of the Pontiac Aztec, how
Yep,
how many ideas got kicked around before it was called an Aztec, and that was after it was already probably designed and somewhere near being built. And
exactly.
the only thing that it's known for, it was the character. Walt, who called himself Heisenberg in Breaking Bad. That's what he drove. That's the Pontiac
That's so
Aztek's
funny. I
claim
did
to
not know
fame.
that because I
That's
didn't watch that show.
no, I
And
know, but
when I would tell people you have to understand Heisenberg's uncertainty principle,
yeah,
they would always go, "Oh, do you watch that show?" And I
and
go, "What
it's
the
like
hell are they
no,
talking about?"
no, it's
No,
called
I
physics,
don't.
and he's been around
Right,
for a while.
a
He
little
was,
bit. Yeah,
yeah, he didn't have the
that's so
mustache,
funny.
but he was part of the team.
Sometimes it's
Anyway,
a hat, Brian.
so sometimes it is the hat, Uncle Buck.
Yeah.
No, but that's the point I'm getting to is that um everything, there's some thought has been put into it, and so going back to intent is everything. Like someone came up with calling it a Snickers bar versus a chocolate gooey nutty bar. Like, there was a distinct thing that came into it, and then maybe down the road everyone says, well, that's a really inappropriate term, but that's someone else's fault, or that's the reason not
Right,
someone else's
right.
fault, but meaning a society has changed to come up with that. And now you're going, well, wait, I came up with this 50 years ago or 30 years ago, and there was no intent behind it. But what do we want to do? We want to crucify, we want to vilify, we have that cancel culture. We want to say, no, everything you've done
That's
is
a
wrong.
great thing. So bringing
And
up the cancel culture and bringing up that if I'm not on your side, then clearly everything I stand for is wrong, rather than looking at
right,
it and having a debate. Yeah,
well,
I
which
think
is
that's
funny
important.
because when we like someone's ideas, people get really into that person and tend to kind of, well, I know their thoughts over here aren't really the best, but they look at what they're saying about this, so we'll excuse our own people that we're fans of, but
Of course we
we'll
will.
criticize someone and say
Confirmation bias.
everything. Yeah,
We'll
yeah, but
only take that information that we deem as being valid.
and I think it's incredibly important now, if we just stuck with naming conventions and names and the words we're using, because they're getting so conflated and they're getting confusing. So and this goes into anything that's science related. Like science and language are used to do what, Greg? Articulate something, especially with
Yes.
science is here's how we explain some nebulous concept, some phenomena that we can't see and understand with our eye. So I drop this water bottle, right, there's physics will explain to me the rate at which that falls and why it falls that way and what gravity is, right? But it's used to explain something that I don't know why. I just know when I pick something up, it falls down, right? And that gets even harder and more difficult. But some of these things now people are coming out with it and passing it off as science, is that it's no, you have to realize that everything is a bias, everything is racist, it's all this, and you're going, well, wait,
You don't even
then
know it is.
but but
You
but
don't even know.
but if you go down that path, the problem is that then nothing has meaning and everything is made up, right,
Of
and
course.
that's completely insane. That's the opposite of what science and language is supposed to do. It's
Right.
supposed to
But it's
clearly
popular, Brian. It's popular.
it's
And right now listen, everything is pendulous. Everything is going to swing back and forth. And in a few years, things are going to go back and it's going to be more normal. It's called social norming for a reason. And things that are less important will become less important again. And things that are more important. Listen, where you are on the side of something, as long as it doesn't hurt somebody, hurt yourself, make somebody look like a bad guy or an idiot, as long as you don't have that horrible intent behind it, then you'll probably be okay. It's always okay to educate yourself about new ideas. The idea is socialization, and as a matter of fact, your the social media, which I still don't understand. That's what's made the world so much smaller, and that's made ideas spread more quickly. It's also made it easier to cloud non-science in with science. So, for example, when we were eating food, that the term for the food uh, uh, sounded bad to somebody that was 6,000 miles away in a different place.
yeah,
There's no way that person knew I was eating it, and the guy that was making the food that was local had no
yeah.
idea. And so they used a euphemism, they used the term, so there wasn't anything there. So okay, so the world's smaller. We'll fix that. We'll clean that up, and we should all we every one of us should say, let's err on the side of the abundance of
Of
caution,
caution,
Brian,
right,
to
right.
make sure that we don't. And you said it's nebulous. It's like holding a water balloon or a handful of eggs and trying not to drop those son of a bitches while you're on a trampoline. So the idea is that give it time. We're on the right track. We're going the right direction, and let's not stray to that right and left lateral limit, Brian, which mean extremism. And extremism isn't good for anybody, and it's not going to do
Well,
anybody any
and
good in the
it's
long run.
not God, it doesn't. It's not even extremism. Sometimes I don't agree with any extremist ideology or fun. Like
There you
just
go.
because when you're
And you're
saying
polarizing my view.
no,
So
but what I'm
I
saying
get you.
is that like if you're of the belief that this is the way things are and this is how it should be, I don't care anyone else. Well, then you're not part of this. Like you're not being a contributing member to society. If you're saying this is the only way things can occur, right? If you just have this, but that's what it gets down to is it's more just intransigence, right? I am unwilling to change my beliefs despite the fact that you're giving me evidence to the contrary, and that's an issue, right? And I know we're in sort of that world, I guess, because of what we do, meaning where
Yes.
everything has to be questioned and we have to get held to a very high standard, right? So we recently
Completely
had a
understandable,
conversation
though.
with someone who was doing something somewhat related, right? And then we said, yeah, but you can't go on the stand and testify to that. And they like immediately got quiet. Like, well, no, that's not, like, well, then bye. Like,
Exactly.
what do you, if it doesn't
Well,
hold legal
let me give
ground and
you
standing,
let me
like,
give you an example. If
if it
it's
can't be,
opinion based, if it's
yeah.
opinion based testimony, don't come to me with it, because even a subject matter expert has a counter narrative subject matter expert that the defense or the prosecution is going to call. So if you can't line it up and show me that there's a mathematical principle or a scientific principle, or that these things tend to show the existence of that, so artifacts and evidence
So,
to support it, then we got to back off of it.
so go back to the naming thing. Why, even when someone accidentally, or maybe their computer autocorrects it when they're sending me an email and they say brain instead of Brian, why do I immediately notice that and have it, like, I know it doesn't bother me, but it does momentarily. I go, God damn it, that's not my name. Like,
We
why
are
do I have that
humans.
immediate reaction? Because I know it was done a complete accident, probably autocorrect, and I've even had it from other people whose name was Brian that spelled it the
Right,
same way as
right.
mine, right? And you're like,
So
you're still like, I noticed that so clear. Like, why? Why is that?
the world is a fragile ecosystem, and ours is a fragile ego system. So what happens is that when we perceive the rest of the world, do you ever hear the people talking about rose-colored glasses and stuff? When I talk about
Yeah,
the lenses fall
yeah.
in front of the faces with the domains, what happens is some people can't get past their own horse shit. And that's dangerous because then we can't take a look at evidence, and it's easy to get pissed off. And what we do is, once we get pissed off, we start bringing up the shields, we start bringing up the barriers, and then we're no good to anybody, because now we just have these two balls bouncing together. Nothing's being changed. We don't have the cup. It's good to use a cup analogy, because I'm carrying my cup. If my cup is full, I can't take stuff from your cup. If my cup isn't full, then I can accept stuff from your cup, and guess what, my stuff isn't so meaningful anymore. Now I start to see different perspectives, and when I take a look at the perspective, I go, wow, I have to take and put your shoes on and walk around your house and see where you put the stuff. You want to mess everybody up? Put all the pictures in your house where the light plugs are. You get what I'm trying to say? And
Yeah,
when they walk around, they'll take a look at that and go, it's just my perspective. It's okay to have a unique perspective,
yeah.
but not to the exclusion of everybody else's perspective. That's not fair. And I'll take you back to certain terms that Greg is the only guy in the world that uses them. And so when I
Gregisms,
don't
I
know how to
call them.
explain the Gregisms, so I
Yeah.
don't know how to, and Shelley called
I've
them
seen him.
Rico's
I've
for a
seen
long
him in other
time,
people's ads on Facebook, by the
which
way.
is hilarious, because you know that they picked that stuff up from me, because I've
Yeah.
been using them for so
I was
long.
like, oh, I
So
remember that. That's a 2008 Gregism.
exactly. And look,
They're not
I'll
even using a
show the
new
photo.
one.
So I'm in the back, and we're doing the TCOM or TRADOC, whichever one is at Q Town in Quantico, and we're all
Yeah, this
sitting
is
around, and
the training and education command, training and
yeah,
doctrine. This is actually for people listening. Like when you have to have a program of record for the military, they have a room full of people of like
geniuses. Yep.
smartest people who just nitpick, go through every line. Hey, that comma should be here, that period here. Hey, what do you mean by this? I
Yep.
want more. I mean, it's just brutal. I mean, it's great for quality control and
Yep.
consistency. I mean, holy crap! But you want to get your program gone through a meat grinder? Do one of those.
But
But
listen,
anyway, yeah,
there's very few programs that meet that standard, and ours do. So I'm sitting around there, and all of a sudden the guy next to me goes, well, who do we cite as a resource? I go, me. And he goes, we can't do that. And I go, well, you got to do that because I invented it. And then the next guy that's next to him goes, yeah, but where'd you get the word? I go, I made it up. And he goes, what do you mean you made it up? I said, well, I didn't know any other way to describe it, so I
so I
used a
use
word that
this.
was existing, and it made sense to me. And he goes, well, you can't do that. So I heard all the way down the line, you can't do that, you can't do that. And the word was atmospherics, Brian. And so the atmospherics, the way, the barometric pressure your body is reading is really important of environment. And you get a vibe. And when somebody says, oh man, the hair in the back of my neck or the
something
pit of
didn't
my
feel
stomach,
right.
you
That's
can
something.
explain every one of those
Yeah.
things with a very scientific term. But all of those feelings together that drives something that's likely to about to occur, those in Gregisms are atmospherics, and they have been since the late 70s. So the idea was that, listen, you can either be a roadblock and stand in my way to get this program out to pre-deployment Marine soldiers, sailors, airmen who need it to survive, and do that. What name would you choose? So they go, well, hell, we don't know. Well, then shut up. Mine is okay until something comes along. And what you just found out, Brian, is how I unintentionally created a term, a naming convention for something.
Yes.
That maybe 70 years from somebody, now somebody looks back and they take offense to. It's that simple. It's that simple. It's something I used every time.
And it was even because same thing with our company name, Arcadia Cognerati. You can do your homework and find out what
very
Arcadia
old and very
is.
Greek, buddy.
But then when everyone goes, well, wait, Cognerati, and every once in a while we get someone who gives us a look and goes, hey, that name, pretty cool, man.
Exactly.
Like, we get that.
But that's
and
why
every
we chose it.
But you made up the term Cognerati. You made that term up.
Completely made up.
Which is hilarious. So now if we see it, people are going to go, well, we know where it came from, but someone will still pass it off, which is hilarious.
Exactly.
So
what was my intent? My intent was to capture something like Illuminati, and say these are terms that society tends to like. Somebody told me one time that that was a Tony party. And I had to go home and look up Tony because it means like some really cool thing. You can't do that. You can't just, I'm kind of guilty of making up
that's
my
like
own
Mean
terms
Girls.
too.
Stop trying to get Fetch to work, Gretchen.
Fetch.
That's
my
so
God.
Fetch.
But how many times do you and I use Fetch?
We do.
Now, because it does work.
Because it works. Because it's just anyone who's seen Mean Girls knows how great that movie is. But.
So anybody that's listening right now or watching along, there's a pool and a pond. Okay. So those type of terms that we use cut out volumes of conversation that we don't have time for. So if I look and somebody's given us a really crappy hotel room and I'll look at Marin and I'll go, well, there's a pool in a pond. He knows immediately everything that follows after that. If we come in and right away everybody is putting up barriers and it doesn't look like we're going to have an easy morning at class, I'll look at Brian and I'll go, sometimes it's the hat. It's because those little terms are hugely meaningful to us, but we don't use them in the context that it was used in the film. We use it in a personal context that we've shaped and changed to name feelings and emotions that we deal with every day.
And that's all names and words. A lot of terms get used that way, right? And we forget that sometimes we
completely innocent.
We can't say it anymore, even bad words, right? That then are okay in certain songs when certain people use them, and that's fine. But meaning that's how words evolve or devolve or change over time, right?
You're exactly right.
That's what happens. So as long as you put into context and understand the intent behind it. So I wanted to get to a couple things because we got folks kind of chiming in a little bit on Facebook Live. But when Brian Marin says shout out to you, Greg said hello. He's a police officer in 20 years in Buffalo, New York, retired in 2007 as a captain. But so he's shout out to you.
Thank you,
a couple. So Scotty Witt brought up some points. Our buddy Scotty from Australia chiming in. So we appreciate it. I hope things are heard things are opening up a little bit more down there by you guys. Hopefully you have a better, easier time controlling the coronavirus issue than we do in the U.S. It's an island. Australia is huge. But so he said, is that a name thing or is it about attention to detail with one of the things we were talking about before? But what he said was later, he said names eventually become sticky. Right. So to the Redskins news, now the name is being stripped off like a Band-Aid. It's going to hurt. Right. So like he's making it sticky in two ways.
And it's going to be 100 years till the generations die out for those people, the older people that are going to still use the name and they'll insist on it or accidentally or they'll slip into it. He's right on. Scotty.
And that's a great point about it becomes sticky. Well, it sticks to that organization. So when you pull it off like that Band-Aid, hey, that hurts a little bit. Okay. That wound will heal, and that's a great point to kind of actually add on to everything we're talking about. And you got other comments in here. Danielle said, yeah, all the time people pronounce it Daniel, like the male version. She's like, hey, my name's Danielle. I get that my wife gets that all the time, McKaylee, because of the way it's spelled. People are like, is her name McHale? And they're like, no, it's McKaylee. And then 5 minutes later in the call,
That's
they're
horrible.
going, okay, hey, Michaela. And she's just like, Mom, why did you have to pick this?
And mom's giggling all the way to the bank every day.
Yeah. No. And these are all,
McKaylee, there's a pool and a pond, McKaylee.
These are all exactly what we mean. And it comes down to the intent. Someone mispronouncing your name, if they're doing it on accident, then it's on accident, right?
But listen, you can do it on accident and still hurt somebody's feelings. That's why I'm saying give yourself the gift of time and distance. So Brian and I were being interviewed by somebody. It was a very famous interview, a very important person, and that person butchered our name every single time they tried to come up with Arcadia Cognerati. So much so that I almost did it right there. You get what I'm trying to say? So now there was no harmful intent.
No.
But we kept having to come in and go, yes, that's Arcadia Cognerati, to make sure that the people could actually find us on the website.
Yeah.
And now somebody listening go, you fool, why don't you change it to something simple? Nah,
no.
If it was simple, it wouldn't be Scotty Witt. It wouldn't be sticky. And you wouldn't be saying it right now and going, we're going to look that up after the show. So sometimes you get injured. But listen, Brian, who's really getting injured? It's our pride. It's our ego. It's internal. We're taking it as an assault or an affront when there's no meaning to it. How pissed was I when the guy told me not to use devil dog? Hey, I grew up with my father. I revere my father.
Yeah,
I'm proud of my father's contributions.
You meant that in a certain way.
The nicest possible way, you know? And so I think those things are going to continue to happen. And I think if we're not open to a rational exchange of thoughts, then we're constantly going to be going there, right there. He just said it just now, and that's no way of going through the rest of it.
I think that's also obviously a huge issue of putting all of it into context, especially historical context when it comes to older names, and trying to take away the meaning of what someone said, right? Especially when someone's tweeting or giving a speech or something that isn't planned or remarks, and you're saying something like, I mean, you've done like when you have to come up with something, you meant it in some way. It's very easy to take that and then go, oh, well, what you meant was this. And the person's like, no, but you use these words and that's what you meant. It's like, no, you don't get to decide what I meant.
You can't go back and say this word plus this word and this one. I've highlighted those three and I'm going to put them together and come up with what you meant. Well, I'm right here. Ask me what I meant, Ask me what's at my heart. And trust me, there are people out there that are complete douchebags that mean what they're saying, that are constantly trying to throw
but those are
pee in the pool.
But that's that, and that, but great, like they're identifying, no, this is exactly what I meant. Okay, well, now we know where you stand. Okay, so got it. Like we now understand your intent every time. And those are usually the people out of the extremes. You can't, for everyone else, I can't walk around updating a fucking glossary of terms I'm supposed to use every day and delete the ones I'm not supposed to use that I learned when I was a kid. You can't expect anyone to
do that and not leave your house. You get what I'm trying to say? And, well, Marin's not in the house, but you can't go out of your box to the neighboring box and sit there and just spend all day long in that, dryer box coming up with new terminology or douching old term. Like the term douche. Douchebag something. Lord and Lady douchebag. Back in the 70s was on Saturday Night Live, and I'll never forget that. You get what I'm saying? The Earl of Sandwich. Those are meant as humorous asides.
I think it has grown in meaning over time. But
certainly has. we see them every day, folks.
But that's another thing, and which is also why you then see, especially I see it more so out here on the West Coast with people coming up with all kinds of different crazy names to name their children. It's the same thing. Well, I want them to be unique, or I want them to be this, and I'm like, hey, do you know what that name means? Like, someone recently, wife was telling about it, like, oh, they named their son Deacon. I was like, oh, are they like a real religious family? Like, I didn't know that. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't know. When you say deacon, I think of the deacon at the church who is a member of the community, he's not a priest, but he's heavily involved in the services. And, he's part of the community. His family is there, but it's like, no, like that's not what they meant by it. I was like, well, that's what a deacon is. Like,
well, I thought of Deacon Jones, the famous ball player, but by the same token, that's exactly right.
But see how I took it versus how she took
together.
it.
Yeah. And they want to know the sound. Marin and I were sitting next to a guy that was listening to the shoe phone, and it kept saying the word over and over. And we go, hey, what's that word you're listening to? And they go, oh, this word in ancient Sanskrit or whatever.
Ancient Sanskrit?
Whatever the hell it is. And it doesn't matter. The idea is that, okay, if you're going to make something so obtuse and so high and right that nobody's ever going to understand it, nobody's going to come and buy your product. It's got to be at least in the realm of possible. It's got to at least sound good coming off the tongue. So don't go out there and intentionally piss anybody off. Do a little bit of research, and you'll probably be okay.
Well, yeah, but that's the other thing is not using the what was that movie, Office Space, the jump to conclusions mat. No, it's a mat, and you jump to conclusions, and whatever you land on, that's what you go with. It's like, no,
that's so wrong.
You have to understand the situation, and so that's kind of what it brought me back to it. It just reminded me of that this morning with that news coming out about the Washington Redskins again. But that we have to be careful when we do those things, because if you go around destroying or destructing or devolving some things, when does it stop? Like, that's a clear case to me where it's like, yeah, like, this is clearly an offensive term. It's 2020. I don't mean to make light of it or laugh at it, just only because my Native American friends have laughed and been like, do you understand how ridiculous? And I'm like, until they said it, I never even thought of it that way. Like, I knew it because actually the second high school I went to, been to a lot of schools. They haven't graduated from all of them, but been to a lot of them. But
that's why his resume is so long.
You have an impressive resume.
Yeah, exactly.
Just haven't completed anything.
Hey, I was at Princeton for 18 months. It was right across the street from where we were working at the fast food
exactly.
service.
I hung out at this pub and this pub. Oh, you know that place? How long were you there for? On and off for 18 months. But anyway, no, but it brought me back to the same thing. The second high school I went to, they were the Redskins, and then they changed it right after to the Red Hawks, and like it was the same thing.
I thought foreskin. That would have been a good one.
That was,
but there was some people out there that would have said, "Wait a minute."
No. And then some would have said, "Well, what about me? I have a 5 skin," and then that's offending to them.
So, but
I
want to make sure.
But it changes, and the whole point is, I think, until those things come to light and people discuss it openly and honestly, and people realize that, go, hey, wait a minute. Oh, okay, this is an obvious one. But the problem is when it gets to things where people are saying things that with no intent behind them or no ill intent behind them, and when someone else gets to come in and say, oh, well, you meant this. It's like, no, you don't get to say that.
First of all, you got to be able to say, I made a mistake.
And no, you can't do that anymore. Apparently you can't make mistakes.
Somebody else has to look at that and say, okay, I acknowledge the mistake and the fact that you mentioned it. So, Brian, I want to go off tangentially just for a second here, and I want to say, folks, one of our podcasts coming up is going to be about domestic violence situations and why they're so dangerous, specifically to coppers and first responders.
Oh, my God. Everyone
over the weekend,
it's a powder keg.
It is. It really is. And it doesn't matter who's holding the match.
No,
that's one of those issues. So we're going to talk about that in great detail coming up. And there was a couple of great coppers that were killed in Texas over the weekend, ambushed, responding to a domestic. And so the daughter of one of the coppers, and I don't know social media, so this is secondhand, this is hearsay, but I've seen the evidence, so I do believe it, was writing, hey, Dad, I miss you already, this and that. And somebody came off the top and said, like, F your father, F all coppers, deserve to happen, good for you. And Brian always reins me in, and Brian goes, yeah, but there's always those people who do it. Listen, what good how good do you feel today coming off the top rail with those comments to a daughter that lost her husband? And Brian, I think just like these naming conventions, if your intent is to be hurtful with your words, then keep your words to yourself. And somebody's going, oh, he just said something about the First Amendment. Now, you have the absolute right to say something. It doesn't mean you should. That's all I'm saying. So when we take a look at the haters,
I always tell people that, especially on social media, don't ever pass up an opportunity to not say anything. I mean, meaning you don't have to get involved in it. You don't have to pour gasoline on the fire. You don't have to make it worse. You don't have to, despite what people say about, no, you don't need to project your opinion to everyone. You can actually think critically on your own and figure out what you think is right and wrong, and you can hold those to yourself and
share it with the hobos on your little bench where you're sitting right now.
I do. They don't.
I know you do.
Some of them don't like it. Some of them love it. Some of them get excited.
Bark at you and chase you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, Debbie's on here too. Hi, Debbie Wright. Thank you, Greg.
Debbie Wright, we love you. We want to come to Dallas. What's the matter?
If you don't have anything good to say, exactly. That was
what
parents...
Thumper and Bambi learned. Just so you know. And Bambi's mom died in a violent gun incident too. So it's good advice, and that's great thinking. Thank you, Walt Disney.
Exactly.
I'm not going there.
So, no. We
Come to
can,
class. You'll hear what
yeah.
I have to say about
We
Walt
could
Disney.
deep dive that where it won't be taken out of context and people won't have a horrible reaction. But
Like my brother Jeff, when I called this morning and sang him a tune, a birthday tune.
oh gosh, that had to be lovely. So we can kind of bring it in for a bit of a landing here, Greg. But I think it's important to understand in general naming conventions, names, words we use to articulate, and you hit it right up at the front, is that your intent is everything. If I say your name wrong because I didn't read it correctly, it's not my fault. You can correct me and I'll apologize. If I'm saying your name wrong to give you a hard time to mess with you, because we've actually that it actually works very well. We've done that before to people who deserved
Quite
it,
well, exactly.
and we needed to get them riled up, but um, then it's a different story. So I think as long as everyone going through this or understanding, or anyone listening or following along says, hey, what was that person's intent? So when someone says something or you get upset by a message, an image, a word, a saying, a this, you have to go, well, what was your intent? And a lot of times, because we don't often do this, a lot of times, since my belief is that in general, most people are good and want
Yep.
to do the right thing,
Yes.
sometimes we get on boards with an ideology that we didn't even know it was an ideology. Sometimes we get on board with movements or things that we didn't even know that there was some other meaning behind it, either good or bad, right? That can occur. So I think we have to be careful when reading someone else's message or looking at what they're saying, is what is their intent behind that? And then you can ask them, hey, what did you mean behind this? What was your intent? And if they didn't have one, or they didn't know, or they're, as we call it, one slide deep, they don't really know what they're talking about, they're just regurgitating something they heard from someone else, then that's going to become evident fairly
Tune them
clearly.
out.
Yeah, and you
Exactly.
don't need
Don't
to
give them
listen
the
to them.
power. Don't give them the power. So my last comment on the topic, and it's a great topic, Brian. We could deep dive for a good long time on it because it's
Yeah,
so
we just
near
want
to
to.
the surface, and it hurts a lot of people. Listen, we worked at Benning, and we worked at Bragg, and we worked at Hood, and we didn't wear hoods, and we weren't racist. Okay,
Yeah,
I also attended those in the context of being a soldier, and I didn't go there saying, "Hey, Civil War general, we're wrong side." Okay, so we didn't know. And anybody right now that's up there and they're ranting and they're raving and they're stamping the foot and saying they knew, I have pictures of them at those same bases doing the same things that they were doing. Why wasn't it important 6 years ago? Why wasn't it important 4 years ago? So back off the gas a little bit, because you're trying to say that we were always at the forefront of this issue, and it's just not true. So we'll all get there together. This is one of the rare times, Brian, that I'll say that if we work hard at this, if we study a little bit, if we give somebody a hand up rather than a hand out,
yeah.
we'll probably all fix this, and we'll be a better nation for it. And you
Well,
know how rare I say that we're in something together. This is one of the things we are, in fact, in together.
I think we need to give people the benefit of the doubt sometimes, right? I
You're
mean,
exactly right.
like it's something as simple as we don't have to be outraged over everything. We can
If you
understand
got a
things and
megaphone and you got a
discuss.
Molotov, then your intent
Well,
is
megaphone's
gloriously
okay,
clear. Yeah.
Molotov not okay, right?
That's what I'm trying to say. So anything less or more than that,
Yeah,
let's draw a line in the sand. I want to hear your opinion. You just don't got to yell at me to make me listen to you. I want to hear your opinion. You don't have to start civil insurrection and a violent attack on me to make me listen to me. Bring us together. We can talk about this. Brian, what do we have at the end of every training session? We have a town hall.
yeah,
Come, sit around. We'll exchange ideas. We'll talk about things. And those
right.
things that we can fix, we will fix.
And it's amazing how once you get down to some of the core issues, how similar everyone's views
You're
are on how to
exactly
deal
right.
with them. Not just how they affect them, but how to deal with them. Once you get everyone together to actually discuss it, and that's why we get super frustrated with a lot of stuff that we see going on, because we know what some of the answers are and we've seen them work before, and anyone who sat there and done it with us went, wow, okay, that guy the
Look how
across the
simple that
street from
was.
me that I thought I hated, we're both dealing with the same issue and can
Yep.
resolve it. So
De-escalation, baby. De-escalation is more than just a word. It's an important prospect, and it's something that
it's
we can
more
work
than a word, it's more than a tactic or procedure, Greg. It's a mindset and a strategy, right? It's a, it's the
on. That sounds good.
it's
I,
first do
I
no
I agree
harm.
with you. Exactly.
First do no harm. All right, so I think we'll wrap it up on that. Thanks everyone for tuning in, especially on Facebook Live. If you're just listening to the pod, you can always follow me on Facebook, and we pop up live there at least once or sometimes twice a week. We're going to start doing some Friday ones that we're probably not going to release as episodes, just we get on and go over everything that went on in the week, and so you guys can hop on and engage with us there. Thank you to everyone. Greg?
What do we have Wednesday?
Webinar Wednesday. That is the 15th of July. If you're listening to this Wednesday, July 15th, webinar. So check that out, sign up, hit us up, and register for it. So thanks everyone for listening in. And don't forget, training changes behavior.